Our peace isn't a place, it's a person. The ballroom at the Grand Okura Tokyo was aglow in crystal and candlelight. Strings of violins floated under the hush of refined laughter, and cherry blossom petals, yes, imported, lined the edge of every gold-rimmed plate. It was, without question, the wedding of the season. But Yuto Tanaka sat like a statue carved in ice. His face, all sharp jaw lines and elegant composure, could have been mistaken for serenity. But his assistant had seen him enough to know better. The subtle twitch in his jaw, the way his right thumb rubbed his index finger like clockwork. He was exhausted, not from work, from living. He hadn't slept, really slept, in 20 years. Not since the night his mother died, and the woman who raised him since, his aunt-turned-stepmother, locked the gates on his childhood and opened the doors to the empire. Yuto didn't like weddings, never had. They were loud, messy, unpredictable. But he was here out of obligation, not affection. The groom was one of the few people left in the world he didn't need to perform for. His best friend from high school, Riku Mori, now a rising tech CEO and hopeless romantic. Yuto adjusted his cufflinks with surgical precision, already dreading the small talk. And then she walked in. Keshia James wasn't late, but she arrived like someone who hadn't been trying to impress anyone for a very long time. Her dress was simple, midnight blue silk that clung softly to her curves. Her curls, natural, flowing, unbothered, framed her face like a halo. And when she laughed at something the bride whispered, it was a sound that didn't belong in this airbrushed, curated space. It was real, and it hit Yuto like a note from a childhood song he didn't remember forgetting. He watched her for a moment longer than was polite, before quickly turning away and signaling for water he wouldn't drink. "Mr. Tanaka, your seat is table 4, the usher bowed. Yuto nodded absently. He already knew. He didn't do surprises. His team had checked the guest list weeks in advance. Background checks, seating charts, everything controlled, ordered. But somehow her name hadn't been on the list. He approached the table and paused. There she was, already seated, right beside his assigned chair. Keshia glanced up from her phone and smiled, polite but guarded. She moved her purse so he could sit. He hesitated, and then sat. The first few minutes were quiet. He glanced over once. She was adjusting the napkin on her lap, utterly unfazed by his presence. He tried not to stare, but failed. Something about her posture, the quiet strength in her shoulders, the confidence without pretense, made him sit straighter, made the air shift. "Nice suit," she finally said, eyes not leaving her glass. He blinked. "Excuse me?" "You look like you walked out of a magazine ad," she said, now smiling. Very serious, very charcoal. He didn't know if it was a compliment or a roast, but for the first time all evening, he chuckled. Just once, but it was real. "Keshia," she said, extending a hand. "From Atlanta." "Yuto," he replied, taking it. Her hand was warm, soft. She tilted her head. "Yuto Tanaka?" He nodded. She blinked, then gave a soft laugh. "Guess that explains the 5 people watching you breathe." He smiled again, smaller this time. Her honesty was refreshing. "Are you with the groom or bride?" he asked. "Bride, college roommate. You?" "Groom," he said. "High school troublemaker." She raised an eyebrow. "You? Trouble?" He met her gaze. "Before I became boring." That made her laugh. A low, warm sound that made the corners of his vision feel softer. He didn't know what this was, but he didn't want to move. They ate, talked, teased each other. She shared stories about growing up in Georgia, about building her consulting agency from scratch after her divorce, about rebuilding herself. And she never once asked about his money, or his empire, or what kind of car he drove. At one point, Yuto stared down at his plate, untouched. "Something wrong?" she asked. He looked up at her. "No one's ever made me forget to eat before." She blinked, taken aback, but her smile deepened, a touch softer, a touch slower. "Well, now you've got a story," she said. They danced, not because he asked, but because she did. And for once, he didn't think about his stepmother, or the cameras, or the investors waiting for Monday's board vote. He just thought of how she laughed when she missed a step, and how it felt to hold someone who didn't want anything from him. That night, back in his penthouse, Yuto stood by the glass window, Tokyo glittering beneath him. His tie was gone, his jacket discarded, his hands in his pockets. He looked out over the city and whispered, "Keshia." Then he went to bed. No melatonin, no pills, no whiskey, no podcasts, no breathing app. Just silence, and for the first time in 20 years, he slept. 5 uninterrupted hours. His housekeeper found him the next morning, still asleep. She called the doctor, panicked, but when Yuto finally opened his eyes, he didn't feel panic, or confusion, or cold. He felt rested. His assistant arrived moments later, breathless. "Sir, are you all right? Should I reschedule your day? Alert the board?" Yuto sat up slowly, still disoriented by the softness in his body. He looked out the window again, then down at his phone. No missed calls, no texts from her. Just one thought echoing quietly inside his chest. I slept because she was near. He exhaled and whispered her name again, like a prayer, Keshia. I slept near her, and now I can't stop searching for silence that sounds like her presence. Yuto didn't tell anyone what happened. He couldn't. How could he explain that after 2 decades of fighting sleep like a war, he had closed his eyes, and peace had crept in like a thief wearing her laugh? It wasn't logical. It wasn't strategic, and that made it dangerous. He sat in his penthouse study the morning after the wedding, still barefoot, still in the linen shirt he'd fallen asleep in. His coffee had gone cold. His assistant, Nakai, stood beside him, tablet in hand. "Sir, the board is expecting your signature on the Kimura merger by noon." Yuto blinked. "Nakai," he said slowly, "who approved the wedding guest list for Riku's ceremony?" "The bride did mostly. You had requested no background checks on non-diplomatic guests to respect their privacy." Yuto rarely forgot his own orders, but for some reason, this one irritated him. "Find me a name." Keshia James, Atlanta. She was at table 4. Nakai hesitated. "Sir, forgive me. Are we vetting her for the foundation, or?" Yuto's gaze flicked upward. Sharp, unreadable. "Just find the name." Nakai bowed slightly and left the room without another word. Later that day, Yuto received the file. Name: Keshia Diane James. Age 34. Citizenship: U.S. Profession: Brand Strategy Consultant. Education: Emory University. Business: Divorced? Yes. No criminal record. Currently staying at the Serica Garden Hotel, room 1105. He didn't smile. He didn't exhale. He just stared at the screen and whispered, "So you are real." That afternoon, Keshia stepped out of her boutique hotel wearing jeans, a white button-down, and black sunglasses that couldn't hide her amusement when she spotted him standing across the street. Alone. No entourage, no security. Coincidence? Please. She smirked. "Mr. Coincidence." Yuto looked mildly embarrassed, or at least the billionaire version of it. "I happen to enjoy Temple Gardens on cloudy Tuesdays." She raised a brow. "Do you also happen to enjoy them 3 minutes after I check in on Instagram?" He said nothing, which only made her laugh. You're not very good at being mysterious, she teased. I wasn't trying to be mysterious, he said, folding his arms. I just didn't want you to leave Japan before thanking you. She blinked. Thanking me? He nodded slowly. You gave me sleep. A pause passed between them. Not flirtation, not awkwardness, just the weight of a strange, undeniable truth hanging in the air like soft fog. She lowered her sunglasses. That is a very smooth line. I've never used a line in my life, he replied plainly. I mean it. They walked the garden paths in silence for a while. Gravel underfoot. Koi fish in still ponds. Stone lanterns casting long shadows. Keshia spoke first. Do you always do that? Investigate people who sit next to you at weddings? I didn't investigate. I asked a question, he replied. One question. Just one? I'm not interested in owning your story. I just wanted to know it wasn't a dream. She paused, expression softening. You weren't dreaming. You just finally let go. Back at the penthouse, Yuto stepped out of the elevator, greeted by silence. Too clean, too white, too hollow. His home was perfect, sleek, designed by an award-winning firm in London, climate-controlled and custom-built to optimize productivity. But it wasn't warm. It didn't smell like real food. It didn't sound like laughter. The air conditioning whispered too efficiently. The lighting obeyed him without intimacy. Every surface gleamed but held no memory. And the worst part? She had designed it. His stepmother, Yuto Tanaka, technically his aunt by blood, his mother's younger sister. But after his mother's death, she had married into the Tanaka legacy, strategically, coldly, legally. Is that her? She asked now, as Yuto passed the corner gallery where she stood sipping matcha, reviewing a foundation donor list. Yuto stiffened. Excuse me. The American woman. Keshia James. You've been staring at her file for an hour. He said nothing. She's pretty, Miyako said, not smiling. Unpolished, but pretty. Yuto hated the way she said it, like a dress at a sample sale. Don't, he said. Miyako set her cup down without a sound. Your mother once believed in dreams too, she said calmly. She believed in poetry and gardens and marrying for love. Now look at the life you have. Power, prestige, a name people bow to. You've surpassed her softness? Yuto's jaw clenched. He looked at her, not as a son looks at a mother, but as a prisoner looks at his warden. I haven't surpassed anything, he said. I'm surviving. Many years ago, it had rained the night his mother died. He was 14. She had gone for a walk after arguing with Miyako over something Yuto didn't understand at the time. A cliff road, a missing railing, a report written too neatly. The next day, Miyako moved in, and Yuto never slept through the night again. Present day, back in his penthouse, he stared at the bed, made perfectly, tucked like a museum exhibit. He sat on the edge and whispered her name again. Keshia. He didn't know what she was. Hope? Coincidence? Distraction? All he knew was he'd had 5 hours of peace because of her. And now, he wanted more. Tokyo wore a soft haze that Saturday, the sky a quiet silver, as if the whole city had taken a deep breath and didn't quite know how to exhale. At the cozy cafe just off Omotesando, Keshia James sipped from her matcha latte and stared out the window, watching umbrellas bob by, watching her breath fog against the glass. Her newlywed friend, Naomi, sat across from her, still glowing from the high of her wedding. You've been off since the reception, Naomi said, nudging her foot under the table. Don't think I didn't notice. You disappeared for half the night. Keshia smiled faintly. And you were supposed to be focused on your groom. I was, until I looked over and saw you dancing with Tokyo's most emotionally unavailable billionaire. That made Keshia laugh, but there was something bittersweet in it. Naomi leaned in. What's going on? Keshia didn't answer at first. She watched the rain trail down the window like it was writing something only she could read. Finally, she said quietly, You ever have someone make you feel seen, just by breathing next to you? Naomi's brow furrowed. Yuto? Keshia nodded. He didn't flirt, didn't touch, didn't make any promises, but for the first time in years, I wasn't shrinking. Naomi tilted her head. So what's the problem? Keshia exhaled slowly. You know I loved Derek once, she said. Genuinely. I gave him everything I had. My loyalty, my money, my time, my future. I built our life from scratch while he built his startup. I covered his debt, managed his stress, kept his secrets, prayed for him when he slept through Sunday. Naomi's face darkened. Keshia's eyes grew distant. He cheated. For 2 years. Said I made him feel like a failure because I had peace, and he didn't. Naomi whispered, Keshia. I filed for divorce the day I found the second phone. I didn't cry in front of him, not once, but I slept on my best friend's couch for 6 months, lost clients, gained 30 pounds. I started therapy just to remember who I was before him. Her voice didn't crack, but it didn't have to. The pain was in the precision of every word. So no, she said, gaze returning to Naomi, I don't fall twice. Later that evening, Keshia found herself standing on the upper balcony of the Nezu Museum, overlooking the garden paths below. And of course, he was there. Yuto, leaning against the far railing, navy coat damp at the shoulders, dark hair slightly windblown. He looked like he hadn't moved in hours. Keshia didn't say anything at first. She walked toward him slowly, umbrella tucked at her side. He noticed her. Of course he did, but he didn't speak. Neither did she. They stood shoulder to shoulder, watching the water drip off the maple leaves below. Your friend married well, he said finally, his voice quiet. He adores her. She deserves it, Keshia replied. She survived a lot, he nodded. So have you. She stiffened slightly, glancing sideways. Been reading more files? No. He looked at her. I've just been listening. Keshia said nothing. The rain was gentler now, just a whisper on the roof. You don't trust me, he said. She gave a soft, tired smile. It's not about trust. It's about gravity. Gravity? Falling, she said simply. I don't do that anymore. He looked at her for a long time, not trying to convince her, not reaching to touch her hand, just seeing her. And then, he said, maybe peace is safer than falling. She didn't answer right away, but then her expression softened, and she smiled. Genuine, just for a breath. Sometimes they're the same thing. The air between them wasn't hot. It was holy, not passion, not tension, but something deeper. The kind of stillness that only came after a storm had broken, washed through and left behind something truer than desire. Understanding. She didn't lean on his chest. He didn't stroke her hand. They just stood side by side, quiet, unrushed, present, and somewhere far from there, in a penthouse ruled by silence, Miyako watched a silent security feed of Yuto walking beside Keshia on a garden path. She sipped her tea with practiced grace, then closed the laptop. The storm came out of nowhere. One moment, the villa was alive with soft jazz, clinking glasses, and the muffled laughter of lingering guests from the weekend's wedding after party. The next, thunder rolled like the voice of something ancient, shaking the glass walls that looked out over Tokyo Bay. Rain lashed the windows. Lightning cracked through the distance. And then, darkness. A collective gasp swept the room as lights blinked once, then vanished. Someone cursed softly. Another guest laughed, trying to lighten the tension, but the backup generator didn't hum to life as expected. The grand villa, built on technology and precision, surrendered to candlelight. Yuto Tanaka stood by the window, phone screen illuminating the sharp lines of his face. "Stay calm," he told the nearby guests. "Emergency systems will restore power soon." But inwardly, he knew the truth. This part of the coast always struggled when storms hit, and something in him didn't mind the interruption. For once, there was no hum of air conditioning, no buzz of devices, no flicker of city light outside. Only quiet, only rain, only her. Keshia was sitting cross-legged on the floor near the couch, barefoot, her heels abandoned. A single candle glowed between them, its small flame trembling in the draft. "Well, Mr. Coincidence," she said softly, "you sure know how to pick atmospheric nights." He allowed himself a faint smile. "I didn't plan the storm." "No, but I bet you scheduled the lightning," she teased. He exhaled, the corner of his mouth tugging. "I like control," he admitted, "but not everything listens." She tilted her head. "That's life." Unscheduled, unpolished, unfair. Her voice was low, thoughtful. The shadows made her skin glow like burnished gold, and Yuto found himself staring longer than necessary. The way her curls caught the candlelight, soft but defiant, reminded him of something his mother once said. The wild things are the most alive. He didn't speak that thought aloud. He just watched her. "Do you ever get lonely?" she asked suddenly. He didn't answer right away. "I live alone," he said finally, "but loneliness isn't new. It's a familiar guest." Keshia rested her chin on her knees. "That's poetic. It's factual." She chuckled quietly. "And factual is safe, right?" He looked at her, meeting her gaze. "It's predictable." "And predictable keeps you from pain?" He paused. The silence that followed was heavier than thunder. "Pain isn't what keeps me awake," he said quietly. "Memory does." The rain softened outside. The storm still whispered against the glass, but the world inside the villa had shrunk to 2 heartbeats and 1 candle. Keshia studied him, not like a celebrity or a billionaire, but like a person she wanted to understand. "What happened to you, Yuto?" she asked gently. He looked at her, and for a second, the walls around him cracked. "My mother loved the rain," he said. "She used to walk out in storms barefoot. Said the sky's tears could wash sorrow clean." Keshia listened, not interrupting. One night, she didn't come back. His voice stayed calm, even detached, but his eyes flickered. "The police called it an accident. My father called it fate. My aunt called it weakness. I call it the night silence stopped feeling safe." She didn't reach for him. She didn't need to. Her eyes softened with something far more powerful than sympathy. Understanding. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He shook his head. "Don't be. That was 20 years ago. But the insomnia isn't." He looked at her, almost startled. "How do you know that?" "You told me," she said, without words. The storm gave one last rumble, like a sigh, and then quiet. They sat in that stillness, 2 people who had lost sleep for very different reasons, one to grief, one to betrayal. Yet somehow, sitting in the dark, they had found something that resembled peace. Keshia leaned back onto the couch, eyes growing heavy. The candlelight flickered against her lashes. "I think you should forgive," she murmured. "My mother?" "No," Keshia said softly, her words slurring as sleep tugged at her. "Yourself." Her breathing slowed, even, calm. Yuto didn't move. He sat across from her, watching her shoulders rise and fall in the rhythm of rest, something he had chased, studied, and never caught. Her presence filled the room like quiet worship, like grace wrapped in skin. He could have gone back to his room. He could have looked away, but instead, he stayed, not out of lust, out of awe. For the first time, sleep didn't feel like surrender. It felt like sanctuary. He whispered, "Rest well, Keshia." Then, slowly, his own body loosened. His eyes closed, and in the gentle breath between candlelight and dawn, Yuto Tanaka slept 6 full hours. The next morning, the housekeeper found them. Keshia still asleep on the couch, Yuto resting beside the window. 2 untouched cups of tea sat cold on the table, and the candle had burned itself down to wax and wick. The housekeeper covered them both with a blanket, smiling faintly. Peace had visited the house that night. Not loud, not dramatic, but holy. When Keshia woke, Yuto was already gone. Only a note remained on the table, written in precise handwriting. "You were right. Forgiving myself might be harder than sleeping, but last night, I learned both are possible." She smiled, a slow, quiet smile that lingered like sunrise after storm. It began as one sentence, a single line scrawled across a hotel stationery card he'd found in his drawer the morning after the storm. He hadn't meant to write it. He'd just woken up feeling human. The air felt warmer. The world less mechanical. For 6 hours, he had been allowed to forget who he was, and so he wrote, "Dear Keshia, I don't know what you did, but the noise, the endless noise inside my head, stopped when you fell asleep. You breathed peace into a place I thought was dead." He stopped, folded the paper, didn't sign it, just placed it in the drawer beside his watch and went about his day. Over the next few nights, the letters multiplied. He didn't mean to write them. They simply appeared on the back of board documents, inside meeting notes, in the margins of quarterly reports. "You asked if I get lonely. The truth? Loneliness is a room I built myself. It keeps me safe from disappointment. You smiled at me like you believed I was still reachable. No one has done that in years. You made me remember my mother without pain. Each letter felt like a confession, not to a woman, but to God. A whisper of something Yuto didn't yet understand. Hope. Miyako noticed the change first. He hummed under his breath sometimes, ate breakfast near the window, stayed up reading reports but didn't grind his teeth. The Empire noticed too. Shareholders whispered that Yuto Tanaka had softened, that something, or someone, had disrupted his legendary discipline. Miyako didn't like disruptions, especially ones that didn't come from her. It was late when she found it. The office was quiet. Yuto had gone to a board dinner. His study door had been left slightly open, an unusual oversight. The silver lamp on his desk cast a narrow pool of light, illuminating a sheet of paper half folded, resting against his notebook. The first line caught her eye. "She makes the noise stop." Miyako's throat tightened. She read the rest quickly. Short, precise, intimate, without being physical. Words that weren't supposed to exist in his world. When Yuto returned, she was waiting, in the dark. He didn't flinch when he saw her, only sighed, loosening his tie. "You went through my desk again." "Your handwriting is careless when you're emotional," she said coolly. "I recognized it." He sat behind the desk, meeting her gaze. "So you read it?" "I did." "And?" She stepped forward, holding the paper between 2 fingers, as if it carried a contagion. "This woman," she said softly, "is making you forget everything you've built. Everything we've built." Yuto's jaw clenched. "We built nothing together. My father built it. I sustain it, and you will destroy it, she said sharply, just like your mother did. He looked up, eyes steady. My mother didn't destroy anything. Miyako's voice dropped into a hiss. Your mother loved, foolishly, recklessly. She let feelings steer her, and it killed her. Don't you remember the night she— Stop, he said, his tone a quiet thunder. Don't use her death to justify your control. She froze. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not Yuto. Not anyone. He rose slowly, taking the paper from her fingers, folded it once, neatly, calmly. Maybe love didn't kill her, he said softly. Control did. For a moment, the room felt like glass about to shatter. Miyako's eyes flashed. You think this woman is peace? She's chaos, Yuto. She doesn't belong here. You will regret— He interrupted without raising his voice. Maybe. But at least regret would be my choice. She stared at him for a long time. And for the first time in her life, Miyako Tanaka saw something in her stepson she had never seen before. Defiance rooted in tenderness. It terrified her. Later that night, Yuto sat by the window again, the city stretching endless and indifferent below him. He unfolded the letter she'd found and added a final line. If love is what stopped my mother's heart, then maybe she left knowing peace at last, and maybe that's what you are for me. Peace I never earned. He folded it carefully, placed it in a wooden box where the rest of his unsent letters lay, and locked it away. He wasn't ready to give them to her. Not yet. But for the first time, he wanted to. The clock read 2:13 a.m. Normally, this was the hour he dreaded most, the hour between exhaustion and despair. Tonight, he leaned back in his chair, eyes half closed, and let the rhythm of rain on the glass lull him toward something he hadn't known in decades. Rest somewhere across the city, Keshia stirred in her sleep, unaware of the letters written in her name. But maybe souls connected through prayer and memory could feel what the body could not, because at that same moment she smiled faintly and turned over, whispering something in her dream. I hope you slept, Mr. Coincidence. The countdown had begun. 2 days left, 48 hours, until Keshia's return flight to Atlanta. One more sunrise, one more goodbye dinner, and then distance. Yuto Tanaka felt it ticking beneath his skin like a silent bomb. She hadn't said she wouldn't come back, but she hadn't said she would either. And that uncertainty, it was louder than any boardroom crisis, louder than any storm. That afternoon, they had coffee by the Riverside Park in Hiru. Keshia was in a soft green sweater and jeans, her curls pinned loosely, her sandals dusty from walking trails. Her skin glowed under the soft spring sun. She looked peaceful, settled, like someone who had finally found balance in herself and wasn't about to risk it again. You ever been to Georgia? She asked him. No, Yuto said. You should come, she said with a grin. Mild winters, decent food, churches on every block. My parents would have questions, but my niece would adore your suits. He smiled faintly, trying not to look too hopeful. Would you stay, he asked softly, if something meaningful opened up here? She tilted her head. What do you mean? Professionally, he said quickly. A consultancy, branding work, high-profile clients. You'd be compensated more than your Atlanta contracts. Keshia's brows furrowed. That's oddly specific. He shrugged lightly. I might have heard of an opportunity through a few contacts. I could recommend you. She gave him a long, unreadable look. You don't want me to go, do you? He hesitated. I want to know you better, without a plane between us. She reached across the table and covered his hand briefly. I like being here, Yuto, more than I expected, but I'm not scared to leave. You shouldn't be scared either. He nodded, But something in him was already unraveling. That night, Yuto stood in his study long after midnight, staring at the glowing laptop screen. The email was already written. Subject, Keshia James, Branding Advisor Recommendation. 2. Director of Partnerships, Tanaka Global Foundation. CC, Executive Assistant, Legal. It outlined a fabricated opening in the Foundation's advisory board, urgently needing cross-cultural branding expertise. Attached was a draft offer with a salary figure large enough to make anyone pause. Yuto hovered over the send button. He wasn't trying to trap her. He just wanted time. More dinners. More mornings. More moments in the dark where he could sleep because she was near. He hit send and immediately hated himself for it. The next day, Keshia showed up at the cafe with a stack of papers in her hand and fire in her eyes. "I spoke to your foundation," she said flatly. Yuto froze. "They said the position was created this morning, that the board hasn't even reviewed it yet, but they pushed it forward because your office recommended it, personally." She tossed the folder onto the table. "I gave you my time, my honesty, my heart in pieces, and you." He stood. "Keshia, you tried to trap me here, Yuto." "It wasn't a trap. It was a delay. I just needed more time." "For what?" she snapped. "To convince me I should stay in a life you control? You could have just asked. I was afraid you'd say no. So you tried to manipulate a yes?" He was silent. Her eyes shone, not with tears, but with anger laced with disappointment. "I've had enough of being someone's project. I've already rebuilt myself once. I'm not letting anyone reshape me again." He stepped closer, voice low. "I didn't mean to control you. I meant to keep you. Because you're the first thing in 20 years that felt like peace." She flinched at that, because it wasn't fair, because it was too honest, because it hurt. "I would have stayed for honesty," she said quietly, "not manipulation." She left without saying goodbye, and Yuto didn't chase her, because chasing would have meant controlling again, and she deserved more than that. Later that night, the penthouse was silent, too silent. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, surrounded by a darkness that felt thicker than usual. He had tasted peace, briefly. Now he drowned in noise again. 1 hour passed, then another. At 3:11 a.m., he drifted off. Not into rest, but into survival sleep. 2 hours. That was all. His body woke itself, as if refusing the gift of rest he'd once been given. Yuto sat up slowly, chest tight. The bed felt emptier now than ever before. He reached for his drawer, opened it, and pulled out a blank page. "Dear Keshia, I never meant to make you feel trapped. I only wanted to stop the clock. Just long enough to feel you near. You are the only silence that's ever healed me. I'm sorry, not because you left, but because I gave you every reason to." He folded the letter, didn't sign it, didn't send it, just placed it in the box with the others. One more apology in a sea of unsent truths. Somewhere over the Pacific, 30,000 feet above regret, Keshia stared out her window as the lights of Japan faded behind her. She didn't cry, but she did whisper, quietly, into the dark cabin, "You should have just asked me to stay." Atlanta. There was nothing wrong with the sunlight in Georgia. It warmed Keshia's skin just fine, filtered through the windows of her apartment like it always had. Her favorite coffee spot still had the same almond croissants. Her niece's giggles still brought her to tears on FaceTime. And yet, everything felt hollow, as if she had landed back in a life that no longer quite fit. She pored over client rebrands, sat in meetings, walked the belt line with headphones in, and still, his name hovered. Yuto. She tried deleting his number, but the threat of their texts remained like a phantom limb. Let me take you to the countryside. Try the onigiri. It's imperfect, like me. Don't go yet. Just stay a little longer. And then, silence. No. Are you home safe? No. I'm sorry, follow-up. No letters, no calls, only silence. And it was worse than betrayal, because it felt like being erased. Tokyo. Yuto didn't sleep. Not properly. 2 hours. That's all his body gave him. He'd wake in a cold sweat at 3:27 a.m., mind racing, breath caught somewhere between apology and longing. The sheets were cold. The apartment felt sterile. His heart was a loud clock. He buried himself in meetings, expansion reviews, a merger in Dubai, a new partnership in Seoul. Work was clean, predictable, dead inside like he was, until one afternoon, while reviewing a draft press release. His phone vibrated with a calendar reminder he hadn't meant to keep. It was a saved message from a month ago. A verse. In peace, I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. Psalm 4, verse 8. Keshia had texted it to him after the storm. No commentary, just the verse. She had said her mother used to pray it over her before bed. Yuto read it again, and couldn't delete it. He tried. His finger hovered over the trash icon, but he couldn't, because for 6 hours in her presence, those words had been true. Miyako noticed the silence too. She entered his office without knocking, holding a leather portfolio. You've rescheduled 3 quarterly meetings, she said coolly. The board is concerned. I've been occupied, he replied, not looking up. With what? Letters you'll never send? He flinched. I don't want to discuss her, he said. You never discuss her, Miyako replied, stepping closer. But your silence speaks volumes. She placed a photo on the desk. A woman in her late 20s. Sleek hair, flawless makeup, cold eyes. Ayumi Takeda, Miyako said. Heiress to Takeda Holdings, fluent in 3 languages. Harvard Law. Her father is eager for a merger. Yuto looked at the photo, then at Miyako. Is she aware she's part of your acquisition strategy? She's aware that legacy comes before romance. Yuto pushed the photo back across the desk. I'm not interested. You don't have the luxury of disinterest, she snapped. You think the shareholders will support a man who traded peace for sentiment? Who's unraveling over a woman who ran back to America? Yuto's eyes darkened. She didn't run. Then why is she gone? He stood, voice low but controlled. Because I didn't ask her to stay. I tried to make her stay, and she saw through it. Miyako's lips tightened. Then that makes her smarter than you. That night, Yuto sat on his balcony, the city glowing beneath him. He hadn't been himself since she left. There was a tea set on the table, the same one she once admired. Her fingerprints had long vanished, but he remembered exactly how her hand curved around the cup. He unlocked his phone again, scrolled to the verse, read it out loud this time. In peace, I will lie down and sleep. His voice caught. He couldn't finish it, because peace had left with her, and silence, without her in it, wasn't peace. It was punishment. Atlanta. Keshia lay awake too, not because of heartbreak, because of memory. The way he had looked at her, not possessive, not desperate, just wounded, like someone who had finally tasted light, only to lose it again. She rolled over, clutching her pillow, whispering, "Why couldn't you just be honest?" In Tokyo, at exactly the same moment, Yuto whispered, "Why couldn't I just ask her to stay?" 3 months had passed, the kind of months that feel longer than they should, the kind that hum with words left unsaid, prayers whispered too late, and memories that cling like morning mist. In Atlanta, Keshia James moved forward, professionally at least. Her agency had doubled its international contracts. She was requested by name for corporate identity work, often with Fortune 500 level clients. Her team respected her. Her bank account looked stable again. Her smile came easier, at least in public. But some nights, she still fell asleep with Psalm 4:8 playing softly through her phone speakers. Not because she needed it, but because once, someone else had. And part of her hadn't stopped hoping he still did. So when the call came from a client's Tokyo partner requesting her personally for a global rebranding strategy, she hesitated. Not because she wasn't qualified, because she already knew whose name was behind the foundation's executive arm. Tanaka Global. Her pulse quickened, but her voice stayed calm. I'll take it. Tokyo. Again. It was strange how familiar it felt. The same scent of cedar in the hotel lobby, the soft bow of the concierge, even the hydrangeas in bloom. But she wasn't the same woman who had flown home shattered. Now she was back on her own terms. No broken hearts, no strings, no regrets, only business. At least, that's what she told herself. The gala was held at the Rokaku Pavilion, a private event space that hovered above the skyline like a floating glass temple. The room shimmered in gold and candlelight. Executives, donors, influencers, and politicians circled the floor in gowns and tuxedos, sipping champagne and speaking in curated tones. Keshia, in a simple black satin dress with cap sleeves and soft gold earrings, blended in with effortless poise. Her team had already flown back. She stayed behind for the final presentation and to meet the board. She wasn't nervous. Not until the announcer said, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder and executive chairman of the Tanaka Global Initiative, Mr. Yuto Tanaka." Her spine locked. She turned slowly, and time, like memory, blurred at the edges. He walked in without a tie, just a sharp tailored black suit, open collar, and the kind of stillness that made noise without trying. His face was the same, elegant, unreadable, but his eyes betrayed him. They found her across the room, and everything else disappeared. The gala, the lights, the cameras, all faded. It was her, only her. He crossed the room without hesitation, not caring who watched, not caring what the press would say. She turned slightly, hands folded over her clutch, expression calm but sharp. "Mr. Tanaka," she said with a slight nod, "I was told you might be attending." "Miss James," he replied, eyes never leaving hers, "I was told you were avoiding me." "I wasn't avoiding," she said coolly. "I was healing." His jaw tightened, not in anger, in guilt. "I'm not here for a reunion," she added. "This is work. So please, don't ruin my job." He leaned in slightly, voice low, just for her. "I already ruined my peace." The words weren't flirtation. They were confession, raw, quiet, final. Keshia blinked, but she didn't move. "You think words are enough now?" "No," he said, "but I'll still say the ones I should have said before." A pause. He searched her face, then offered something small, fragile in its honesty. "I missed you. Not just your presence, your peace." A photographer stepped in. Flash, another. Cameras clicking. Whispers circled. "Is that the American consultant?" "That's her. The one from last year." "They're talking again?" Keshia turned slightly toward the cameras, smile poised. Yuto stepped back, respectful, but not retreating. Later, while speaking on the panel about global integrity and impact branding, Keshia was calm, intelligent, brilliant. Yuto sat in the front row, unreadable. But beneath the table, he gripped the verse card she once texted him. Psalm 4, verse 8, still in his wallet, folded, faded, unforgotten. As the gala ended and guests filed out, Keshia walked alone toward the terrace, needing air. He followed, but this time he didn't approach with certainty. He approached with care. She stood with her hands resting on the rail, Tokyo glittering beneath them like a sea of sleepless souls. He stopped beside her, but didn't speak. She broke the silence. "You look like you're sleeping even less." He smiled faintly. "I'm not." 2 hours again. "Some nights. Others are worse." "I told you," she said softly. "Peace can't be forced." He turned toward her. "That's why I'm not asking you to stay this time." "Not yet." She finally looked at him. "I'm here for a few weeks," she said. "Let's see if we both still recognize who we are." He nodded slowly. "I'd like that." They didn't touch. They didn't promise. But they stood side by side, no longer strangers, not yet lovers, but no longer afraid of what silence might bring. Because sometimes silence means beginning again. The invitation arrived in a sleek white envelope, tucked between her morning agenda and the latest mood boards from her design team. Coltech x Tanaka Global. Innovation and Legacy Launch Brunch. Friday, 10 a.m. Akasaka Heights. Keshia frowned, scanning the gold embossed logo. Coltech. She knew that name. Too well. Her chest tightened. There couldn't be another Derek Cole launching a tech company in Tokyo. Not with that spelling. Not with that arrogance. But the confirmation came before she could even ask. A knock at her office door. Then the soft voice of Yuto's executive assistant. "Miss James, Mr. Tanaka asked me to inform you. Your former spouse is in Tokyo. He'll be present at Friday's event. It's been arranged by Miyako-sama." That night, she stood by the hotel window, one hand on her hip, the other gripping her phone so tightly her knuckles went pale. She hadn't spoken Derek's name aloud in almost 2 years. Not since the divorce was finalized. He'd cheated, lied, manipulated, and when she walked away, he said she was quitting on God's redemption. She almost left the church because of him. But God, in His mercy, never left her. Friday, 10:03 a.m., Akasaka Heights Rooftop Garden. Derek Cole entered the brunch like he was the main event. Tailored tan suit, perfect waves in his hair, gold-rimmed glasses, and a new voice. Literally. He spoke slower now, calmer, with scripture laced casually into his conversation. "The Lord's really humbled me, sis. I was blind, but now I see. God used the pain to prune me." Keshia stood near the refreshment table, arms folded. He spotted her instantly and walked over, smiling like they were meeting at a high school reunion instead of at the scene of spiritual war. "Keshia," he said, eyes warm, "you look strong." "I am," she said flatly. "What are you doing here?" He gave a small chuckle. "Wow, not even a hi?" She arched a brow. "I'm here on kingdom business," he said, placing a hand over his heart. "God restored me. He led me into the tech space. I'm building equity solutions for small churches. Yuto's stepmother reached out about global funding, but when I saw your name on the guest list, I took it as confirmation." "Confirmation of what?" she asked, voice low. He looked at her like she was a vision. "A prize, a prayer he thought was still waiting to be answered. That you're my wife. Still." Keshia blinked, stunned, not because she hadn't seen it coming, but because it felt so off, like a melody sung in the wrong key. Later, after the brunch, she found Yuto on the edge of the rooftop, sleeves rolled, phone in one hand, cup of untouched tea in the other. She walked toward him. He didn't turn. "You knew." "I found out 2 days ago," he said without looking at her. "Miyako arranged it, quietly, and I didn't stop her." "Why not?" "Because I didn't want to be the one keeping you from your past. Or because you were afraid of losing me to it." That made him turn, slowly, face blank. His voice was tight, honest. Yes, she didn't soften. I'm not going back to Derek, she said, but I needed you to be steady today. You weren't. Yuto's eyes flickered. You didn't see what I saw. He looked at you like you were still his. She stepped closer. Then you should have looked at me like I never stopped being yours. Silence, thick, unspoken. He looked away, jaw clenched. He says he's changed, that he's born again. I didn't know how to compete with redemption. You don't, she said, voice quiet. You don't compete with grace. You live your own. That night, Keshia sat alone on the bed in her hotel room, Bible open, journal untouched. Forgiveness was already there. She had forgiven Derek long ago. But reconciliation? That wasn't the same thing. She whispered aloud, staring out the window. God, I can forgive him and still say no, right? And somewhere deep in her spirit, the peace came. Yes. Meanwhile, across the city, Yuto stood in front of the letter box, the one filled with the things he never sent her. He pulled out the most recent one. Dear Keshia, I wanted to stand beside you today. I failed, not because I didn't trust you, but because I still don't trust that I'm worthy of what you carry. I love your peace, but I've never believed I deserved it. He folded the letter, didn't shred it, didn't hide it. He placed it face up on his desk. The next morning, Keshia showed up at the foundation headquarters without a meeting on the schedule. The receptionist blinked, surprised. Miss James? I'm not here for work, she said. Tell Mr. Tanaka, I'm here to clear the air. He met her in the boardroom, alone. You don't have to say anything, he said quietly. I understand if Derek is not why I came. Yuto's breath caught. She walked toward him, firm but calm. I'm not here because of who I left. I'm here because of who I'm still deciding to believe in. She reached into her purse, pulled out a folded note, and placed it on the table. It was Psalm 4, verse 8, written in her own handwriting. In peace, I will lie down and sleep. For you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. He looked at her, speechless. I'm not your peace, Yuto, she said, but I will walk beside you while you learn how to rest in the one who is. And for the first time in months, he exhaled. It started with a file, a dusty envelope, slipped anonymously onto Yuto's office desk just past midnight. No note, no fingerprints, only the Tanaka family crest stamped into wax. Inside, the original death report of his mother, Sayaka Tanaka, dated 20 years ago. Yuto read it once, then twice, and then the world tilted, because attached to the final page, clipped carefully behind a forged report of cardiac failure, was the real suicide note, handwritten, signed in his mother's calligraphy, soft rambling, painful. To my Yuto, forgive me. I tried to protect you. I tried to stay, but I am tired. I am not strong enough to survive her anymore. They will say I was unstable. They'll say I was selfish, but my sister has never let go of control, and now I'm too weary to keep fighting her. You are light. You are enough. And I pray someone stronger than me will teach you to sleep again. Yuto's hands trembled. The word sister burned like acid on the page. Miyako had lied, covered, buried it, not to protect the family, but to seize it. He confronted her, alone. No lawyers, no board members, just silence between two people bound by blood and betrayal. She didn't deny it. She never did. I gave you an empire, Miyako said coldly. You stole my mother's voice, he whispered. She folded her arms, unmoved. Sayaka was fragile. I did what had to be done. You turned my grief into your throne. She wasn't going to survive. She never had the stomach for legacy. And you? His voice broke. Do you sleep well knowing I haven't closed my eyes since I was 14? That made her pause, only for a second. Then, she was weak. I made you strong. No, he said. You made me quiet. That's not the same thing. He left without looking back. It was past midnight when he knocked on Keshia's door. No warning, no words, just him, soaked from rain, hollow-eyed, clutching the folded note like it might vanish. She didn't ask questions. She opened the door and stepped aside. Yuto entered like a man carrying the ruins of everything he used to believe in. He didn't sit. He didn't speak. He just handed her the note. Keshia read it once, closed her eyes, then reached for his hand. It was cold, but it didn't pull away. She led him to the sofa. No dramatic gestures, just presence, the kind you only learn after surviving grief and betrayal yourself. She knelt beside him, held his hand in both of hers, and prayed, Lord, this is your son, not just a businessman, not just a name, not just a burdened heir. He is yours. You said you give your beloved sleep, so I'm asking now. Take the weight off his chest. Let him breathe. Let him rest. Let him know he doesn't have to hold the whole world up to be worthy of love. In peace, he will lie down and sleep. For you alone, Lord, make him dwell in safety. Her voice was soft, steady, sure. Psalm 4 verse 8 lingered in the air like incense. Yuto's breathing slowed. He leaned back against the couch, eyelids heavy. She stayed beside him, one hand on his arm, the other still folded in prayer. And then he slept, not a nap, not 2 hours. But rest, the kind that sinks into the soul, the kind that doesn't ask for permission, the kind that only comes when truth has finally broken the lie. When morning light spilled through the window, soft and golden, it landed on the quietest scene Tokyo had ever known. Yuto, still asleep, chest rising evenly. Keshia, beside him, curled gently at his side. Not in romance, but in reverence. The peace between them was not performative. It was holy, no words, no movement, just two people. One finally sleeping, the other finally safe. The sun climbed slowly over the skyline, and for the first time in 20 years, Yuto Tanaka met the morning, rested. It began with a headline, Tokyo Times, billionaire, heir under fire for secret affair with divorced American woman. Then came the subheadings, Keshia James, opportunist, Tanaka Foundation in crisis, secret marriage, secret funding, secret lover. By morning, the whispers were coordinated. By noon, the storm was national. Yuto walked into his boardroom flanked by silence. Every executive had a copy of the article. Every face was tight. Every chair turned slightly away from his. At the head of the table sat Miyako, pristine in pearl gray, hands folded, expression passive, snake-like. Thank you for coming, she said softly. This is a difficult day, but clarity is vital when reputation is at stake. Yuto didn't sit. He stood tall, suit jacket unbuttoned, the faintest shadow beneath his eyes, the only sign that he hadn't slept since the leak. Because this time, even rest couldn't shield him from what he feared most, Keshia being hurt by his world. A senior board member cleared his throat. Mr. Tanaka, the foundation's name has appeared in 27 news cycles in the past 12 hours, all tied to a woman whose background. It's none of your business, Yuto interrupted, voice calm but unflinching. Miyako spoke next, her tone oozing maternal diplomacy. Yuto, we understand affection clouds judgment, but this woman has a history. divorce, financial instability, no legacy ties. She's already been seen as a distraction. Now she's a liability. And yet, Yuto said slowly, she is the only reason I've been human for the last 6 months. Silence. Miyako rose. There are calls for your resignation, she said. From the board. From donors. Even from parliament members who fund the foundation. If you won't let her go, we will begin severing you. Yuto looked down at the conference table, ran his fingers once across the grain of the polished wood. Then he looked up, at every man and woman who had once bowed when he entered, and then at her, the woman who raised him in a house of cold ambition. He spoke clearly. If peace is weakness, then I'll stay weak forever. Gasps echoed. Miyako's lips parted slightly. She hadn't expected that. He continued, for 20 years, I've been the man you molded. Silent, strategic, sleepless. You trained me to fear softness because you feared it in yourself. But Keshia, she taught me that peace doesn't destroy empires. Control does. That afternoon, Derek Cole's tech deal collapsed. His funding, initially pushed through by Miyako as a distraction play, was pulled when private emails surfaced showing him bragging about getting his ex-wife back in Tokyo. Yuto didn't leak it. Someone else did. A quiet ally on the board. A woman. A mother. She never gave her name, but Keshia's integrity was vindicated. Derek disappeared from Tokyo within a week. As for the media, they shifted. Tokyo Journal. The woman who made the air sleep. Breaks silence. Sunday. Global. Black consultant at the center of billionaire scandal speaks gracefully. CNN World. Faith, peace, and power. The love story behind a corporate collapse. Keshia didn't grant interviews, but one photo went viral. Yuto and Keshia stepping out of the Tanaka Foundation side exit, his hand in hers. No bodyguards, no entourage, no performance. Just peace. That night, as they sat on the rooftop of her hotel with takeout in paper boxes and legs dangling over the edge like teenagers, Keshia finally asked, "Why did you say it like that? I'll stay weak forever." Yuto looked at her, quiet, then said, "Because I've never felt more protected than when I stopped protecting myself from you." She smiled, set her food down, and rested her head on his shoulder. They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. They just breathed in the freedom of being seen, fought for, and unashamed. Somewhere far below, the empire churned and twisted. But up here, they were free. It was raining again, not violently, just a soft, steady drizzle that made the world quieter, cleaner, more honest. Yuto Tanaka stood at the top of the Tanaka Global Headquarters, 28 floors above the city that once bowed to his last name. His signature was still drying on the legal documents in his hand, but the weight of what he'd done had already settled deep into his chest. He had done the unthinkable, signed away controlling shares of the Tanaka conglomerate. The company his father had built, his stepmother had weaponized, and he had sustained like a ghost in a tailored suit. It was all gone, and he was finally free. The conference room had been silent when he did it. No raised voices, no scandal, just the slow scratching of a fountain pen on paper and the quiet disbelief of those who witnessed it. "Mr. Tanaka," one executive had whispered, "are you sure?" Yuto didn't flinch. Empires can be rebuilt. Souls can't. Then he stood, handed the documents to legal, and walked out of the only world he'd ever known, without regret. Now he stood at the glass, staring down at the city that had once owned him. He whispered her name, not in desperation, in peace. Keshia. Meanwhile, she stood in the corner of his private gallery, the one floor they'd once redesigned together after the gala. A place filled not with investments or power symbols, but photographs of outreach projects, schools, shelters, small churches with crooked steeples and wide open doors. It was here that she found the proposal he left for her. Not a love letter, not a plea, a partnership agreement, the Tanaka Renewal Foundation, a small-scale humanitarian project designed to uplift communities ignored by globalization. No profit, no investors, just restoration. He found her standing in front of the concept board, still in her coat. She turned when he walked in, not smiling, not afraid, just present. "You're really doing this," she said quietly. "I already did." She nodded slowly. "You walked away from billions." "I walked toward peace." Keshia studied him. "You're not asking me to stay this time." "No," he said, voice steady. "I'm asking you to lead with me." She raised a brow. "As your partner?" He stepped closer. "As the person who reminded me that peace isn't found in palaces or portfolios. It's built, choice by choice, brick by brick, heart by heart." Keshia exhaled. "I don't want to be your soft landing." "You're not." He reached into his coat and pulled out the now worn card she once gave him. Psalm 4, verse 8. "I kept this," he said, "even when I didn't believe it, even when I was the one causing storms." She stepped forward. "I'm not staying for rescue," she said. "I don't need a crown. I've worn ashes long enough to know their weight." "I know," he said. "You're staying because you're called." She nodded once, then added quietly, "Let's build something that heals people. No gold gates, no glass towers, just work that honors the God who kept us both alive." He didn't touch her, not yet. But in his eyes, reverence, depth, gratitude, and in hers, trust. Later that evening, they walked the side streets of Asakusa, in the drizzle. No bodyguards, no chauffeurs, no titles. Just two people, sharing a single umbrella and a calling. She laughed when the wind blew the umbrella sideways. He pulled her close without thinking. She didn't pull away. And when he looked at her beneath the soft rainlight, he said what he'd been holding for too long. "You didn't just make me sleep, Keshia. You made me wake up." She smiled, soft, whole. "Good, because we've got work to do." The town was small. One streetlight at the end of the road, one grocery store with a handwritten sign, an air so clean it made your lungs wonder if the city had been lying to them all along. Itoshima, just west of Fukuoka, a quiet coastal village nestled between the sea and the mountains. They arrived with only 2 suitcases and a blueprint for something no investor could touch, a second chance for people forgotten by progress. The cafe was once called Kawa no Uta, Song of the River. Abandoned for 7 years, it had peeling paint, broken shutters, and floors that moaned with every step. But Keshia saw potential, and Yuto saw her vision like sunlight through stained glass. They gutted it together, hammered drywall, tore out rot, painted walls the color of grace, soft green, warm cream, wood the shade of honey. No one recognized him. To the villagers, he was just the man who came back to life beside the woman who taught him how. They reopened as a training center for displaced workers, women who'd aged out of factories, men recovering from addiction, youth who had dropped out of high school but never out of hope. Keshia ran the branding workshops. Yuto taught digital literacy and served coffee without hesitation. Sometimes when no one was watching, he even wiped down the windows. "You know," she teased one morning, "you're technically a barista now." "I've never been prouder." Their love didn't explode. It exhaled. In soft mornings where he brought her tea before she asked. In the way she packed him a bento boxes with sticky notes that said, "Drink water," or "God's got this." In whispered prayers before opening the cafe doors. in spontaneous dancing while the soup simmered. Once, she caught him asleep in the corner of the staff lounge, arm draped over a clipboard, mouth slightly open. 6 hours had passed. He hadn't taken anything, hadn't needed a routine, hadn't even noticed. She covered him with her sweater, eyes misty with awe. The insomnia was over, not cured, healed. One evening, as waves crashed outside the back patio and the sky burned orange, Keshia leaned on the railing and said, "Did you ever think life could feel normal?" Yuto walked up behind her, slipping his arms around her waist. "I didn't even know I wanted normal. Until you." They stood like that until the moon rose. Locals began calling them Odayaka Fufu, the calm couple. Not perfect, but gentle, peaceful, rooted. One Sunday afternoon, the pastor of the little church down the road asked Yuto to give a testimony. He stood in front of 27 folding chairs, hands in his pockets, eyes on the ground. "I used to run an empire," he began. "I couldn't sleep, couldn't breathe, and I believed love was something people used to make you weak." He looked over at Keshia, who gave him a small nod. "But then someone showed me that peace doesn't make you weak. It makes you brave enough to stop hiding." That night, as crickets sang and the tide whispered secrets to the shore, Keshia found him standing barefoot on the beach. The stars blinked overhead. He turned to her. "You're the only home I've ever had." She stepped into his arms. And for the first time, he didn't flinch from belonging. The article dropped on a Monday morning. No warning, no heads up, no polite requests for quotes. Just a headline: "The woman who made Japan's billionaire sleep." A Southern-born consultant. A story no one saw coming. Keshia woke to a phone, vibrating across the table, and a string of unread messages lighting up her screen. Yuto wasn't in bed. She found him outside, barefoot on the porch of the seaside cottage, staring at the ocean like it might swallow his thoughts before he did. His phone was in his hand, silent now. But the internet wasn't. She approached quietly. He didn't look at her, just whispered, "It's everywhere." She sat beside him. "Who wrote it?" "Some woman from the People's Paper. Says she followed my resignation trail. Somehow found our foundation filings. Interviewed one of the local interns." Keshia nodded slowly. "They used your name?" He turned to her, jaw tight. "They used yours. Full name. Photos, background, the works." She exhaled, not in panic, just in preparation. By noon, her name was trending. Hashtag Keshia James. Hashtag the peace heir. Hashtag the woman who made him sleep. It was viral fodder now. Memes, video edits, motivational quote reels, TikTok syncing their story to violin covers and gospel music. Some people called it a fairy tale. Some called it fake. Some worse. By evening, a reporter knocked on their cafe's back door. Yuto didn't answer. He sat at the kitchen table, fingers laced tightly together, as if holding himself together was suddenly a two-handed task. "I tried to protect you," he said, voice low. Keshia stood by the sink, drying a mug. "You didn't need to," she replied. "I was never hiding." "But I was," he admitted. "I thought if we built something small enough, quiet enough, the world wouldn't find us. I was wrong." She crossed the room, pulled out the chair across from him. "Peace was never about hiding, Yuto." His eyes met hers, vulnerable, wounded. "Then what is it?" She reached for his hands, folded them inside hers. "Rest isn't a place. It's a person. And if God gave us this love, this rhythm, this mission, then he can hold it when the world stares. We don't need to perform. We just need to obey." The room fell quiet, and then, softly, she stood and said, "Let's kneel." He blinked. "Now? Now?" And so they did. In their kitchen, kneeling on worn wooden planks that had seen flour and spilled coffee and laughter, they bowed their heads and released control. She prayed first. God, you see, you know, we don't ask to be hidden. We ask to be holy. Let our love reflect you even when it's uncomfortable. Then he added, if the spotlight comes, let it never outshine the truth, that you are our peace, not this place, not this quiet, you. They stayed like that for a long time, not for the cameras, not for a headline, but because their hearts were safest there, at God's feet. The next day, another article surfaced, this one gentler, deeper. They knelt, not for fame, but for faith. A local journalist had seen the prayer through the cafe's side window. He never took a photo. He just wrote about it. The quiet act of two people surrendering fame before it swallowed their peace. That Sunday, the cafe stayed closed, not for hiding, for Sabbath. Keshia and Yuto sat on the shore with thermoses of tea, watching the waves crash against the rocks. I used to think rest was sleep, he said. And now? He turned to her. Now I know it's trust. She leaned her head on his shoulder. The world could spin, but their anchor held. If por Martins Niki. It was cherry blossom season in Itoshima. Every tree along the river path bloomed in pink so soft they looked like prayers sewn into the sky. Keshia always said spring in Japan felt like heaven, remembering how to sing. Yuto had planned nothing. No photographers, no announcements, no flash mobs or rented violins. He only woke at 4:37 a.m. Something pulling him out of sleep, not in panic, but purpose. She was still beside him, curled in the blankets, breathing evenly, peaceful. He whispered her name, Keshia. She stirred slightly, eyes blinking open. Is it morning already? Not quite, he said, but it's time. They walked the short trail down to the clearing by the river, the one behind the cafe, where the land dipped just enough to cradle the sunrise. She was still barefoot, hair in a wrap, wearing his oversized hoodie, and somehow it was the most beautiful he had ever seen her. When they reached the cherry trees, she gasped softly. They were in full bloom. The petals drifted slowly through the air like confetti thrown by angels. Yuto, she whispered, awestruck, but he was already kneeling. Right there. In the dew-covered grass, beneath the first light of dawn, beneath a sky blooming with God's artistry. No speech, no theatrics, just him and a small velvet box. He opened it. 2 rings, simple, silver, engraved inside. Psalm 4, verse 8. He looked up at her, voice steady. Not to complete me, he said. I was whole when God gave me peace through you. But to walk beside you, while I rest, while we serve, while we build something the world doesn't understand. Marry me? Not for legacy, not for the world, but for the quiet mornings, the prayers, the ordinary Tuesdays, the God who brought me back to life. Tears welled in her eyes, not because she was surprised, because she wasn't, because everything about this was right. She knelt with him, took the box from his hands, slid the ring onto her finger, then his, and whispered, yes, to every quiet morning, every broken thing made whole, every act of love done in God's name. Yes to you, as my partner, as my rest, as the answer I never saw coming. The wind picked up, soft and warm. Blossoms swirled around them like a veil. They stood, and for the first time, kissed, not in passion, but in promise. A covenant whispered between 2 people who had chosen peace over power, purpose over pride, love over legacy. Later that morning, as the townspeople began to stir and the cafe lights flicked on, a small sign appeared in the window, closed for joy. Inside the rings, the verse shimmered, "In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety." Psalm 4, verse 8. They didn't need a wedding they planned, because this was the one God had been preparing all along. 5 years later, the sea whispered outside their window, as soft and familiar as breath. It was morning, not early, not rushed, just morning, the kind of morning that tasted like trust. Inside the house, light streamed across wooden floors. In the garden, tiny feet pattered through the dew. Yuto Tanaka James, all curls and crooked laughter, chased a butterfly with reckless determination. A pink watering can in one hand, her favorite plush sheep in the other. "Mommy, look!" she shouted through the open door. "It's flying toward the fig tree." Keshia smiled from the kitchen sink, hands still wet from rinsing blueberries. "Don't yell at the butterfly," she called gently. "Let it come to you." Mina giggled and nodded like it was gospel. The bedroom was still dim. Yuto was still asleep, not drowsing, not halfway alert. Asleep, flat on his back, mouth parted slightly, one arm flung across the pillow Keshia had left behind. His hair tousled, shoulders rising and falling in slow, complete rest. Keshia tiptoed in, towel in hand, and sat beside him on the edge of the bed. She studied him. Not like a man she married, but a miracle she still couldn't quite believe. Years ago, he couldn't close his eyes without reliving the night his mother died. Now, he slept through dawn. She brushed his hair back gently. He stirred, smiled, opened his eyes slowly, and laughed under his breath when he saw her. "You're staring. You're snoring." He chuckled and reached for her hand, brought it to his chest, then whispered, "I spent half my life chasing power. Now I wake up to grace." She kissed his forehead. "Grace looks good on you." Later, after breakfast and a short run with Mina on his shoulders shouting, "Faster, Appa! Faster!" They returned inside. On the hallway wall, just beyond the front door, hung a simple framed print. No gold, no calligraphy, just the verse that started it all. "In peace, I will lie down and sleep. For you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety." Psalm 4, verse 8. Mina pointed at it every night before bed. Keshia whispered it during storms. Yuto no longer feared it, because it wasn't just a prayer anymore. It was a testimony. The letter wasn't dated. It didn't need to be. Yuto sat at the writing desk just beyond the window facing the sea, fountain pen in hand, his daughter napping in the next room. He opened the drawer where her photo still lived, his mother, Sayaka, barefoot in the garden, laughing. He breathed and wrote, "Dear Oka-san, I finally understand. Love wasn't your ruin. It was your rest. I used to believe peace made people soft. I see now that it made you brave. To love, to feel, to raise me without becoming what they expected you to be. You didn't fail me. You gave me my first glimpse of tenderness, and though the world tried to harden me, God sent someone who made me remember. Her name is Keshia. She's not afraid of storms. She sings when she works. She fights for people who don't know how to fight for themselves. And when she prays, I sleep. I have a daughter now. Her name is Mina. Her laugh is yours. We're not building empires anymore. We're building people, and I'm finally at peace. Your son, Yuto." The end.